Welcome to today's episode of Caribbean Birth Stories. I'm thrilled to have with me the first person from the Caribbean Island Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. First, let me start by saying that the content of today's episode may be potentially distressing or triggering to some audiences as we discuss my guest's experience of miscarriage. Meet Jihan Williams, an author, attorney, and social advocate. She has spent the last 2 decades heavily involved in professional and personal activities focused on empowering young people and women through creative arts and civic engagement. After suffering the devastating loss of her son after 26 weeks of pregnancy, she turned to writing as her emotional outlet. On November 23rd, 2021, the day that would have been her son's first birthday had he lived, she launched her self published book, Lifting the Weight of Miscarriage: Healing Insights of Pregnancy Loss for Sufferers and the People Around Us. The book chronicles the first 6 months after her loss and seeks to offer helpful insight to help other pregnancy loss sufferers and the people around them to navigate the experience with more compassion and healing. Welcome, Jian.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, and I'm so glad we have this opportunity to chat today
Yes,
because as we said off camera, this topic is kind of taboo, but quite prevalent in our communities.
extremely. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's so amazing how common the experience seems to be, but yet we are so ashamed to talk about it and afraid to talk about it in some instances as well.
Yes, yes. So before we get to the book and your experience of loss, let's start with your journey to motherhood. It wasn't necessarily a smooth one. There were some challenges. So talk me through that.
Right. So I was someone who, in my 20s, I did not want to get pregnant at all. I knew that it's something that I eventually wanted, but it's something that you sort of say, okay, 4 more years, 3 more years, 5 more years, not yet. I kept
Mhm.
putting it off and decided I would focus on studies and my professional life first. And then when it came to a point where I felt like I was comfortable to start thinking about that, I thought it would just be, just
Easy peasy.
ready to go and it would
Mhm.
happen. But 4 years passed before I had actually gotten pregnant.
Mm.
It was it's an experience where you doubt yourself, you question what's wrong with you.
Mhm.
Um, and particularly for me, because my partner has a son, and he was 8 years old when we met. So
Right.
everybody's thinking like, okay, he's fine, you're the problem. Um,
Mhm.
but it really was difficult because you don't understand why it's not happening. And I don't think that there was much. I didn't know anything about what to do and options and all of that. So you just kept trying and you just kept being disappointed when, the period became the sign of failure every
Yes.
month.
Mhm.
And it really was difficult. It really was a difficult journey. Mine was not smooth at all. And we don't talk about the fact that some of us get very angry or
Mhm.
jealous when we see people just,
Yep.
you sneeze and you're pregnant. um
Correct.
or it seems that way. So
Mhm.
I went through all those emotions. It really wasn't an easy journey, but
Mhm.
yeah, it took 4 years of
Wow.
trying before anything happened.
So did you seek help in getting pregnant? So did you go to doctors and were you told there was a specific issue or nothing was found?
All I was told was that I had fibroids. Nothing else, but everyone thought, or the doctors that I consulted all said that they're not in a position to cause a problem or
Right.
affect that. So there was no explanation given. They just tell you keep trying. You
Right.
tried, different medications to help with ovulation and things like that. But and I also found out that I had PCOS as well. Uh,
Right.
so, which is seems again to be like the new headache because everybody seems, I don't know, I never used to hear about it. Now it seems like so many people are suffering with that. So, having PCOS, having fibroids, yet everyone's saying, it's possible,
Yes.
just keep trying, and you
Mm-hmm.
keep trying, and nothing is happening, then you really start questioning yourself. But I didn't go any further than that.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
And what about in the climate and the culture of St. Kitts and Nevis? How did you cope with your experience of, well, at this point in time, you're thinking, it's infertility of some form. Um, how did that your culture affect you?
I think it's perhaps the same in every Caribbean country, but particularly because we're so small and everybody knows you and everybody knows your history and your potential, and everybody thinks, it's about time when you're getting this child. I mean, we constantly hearing that, and then you're in a settled relationship as well, so it's like, what's the problem? You are
Right.
established professionally. What's the problem? What are you waiting on?
Yes.
And I used to face all those questions. And my brother has three children. It's only two of us, and he has three children, and they're 8 years apart. Each each
Oh
eight
my
years apart.
goodness.
He has 21 and 13 and 5, I think, right now. So
Mhm.
I've always it's like my brother just every 8 years just he gets in
Popped
one, and
out
it's
the
like
child.
off of the mark. That's
Yeah.
that used to be everybody's question. When is it going to be your turn? And I think I just used to respond like, "Oh, not me. I don't want a responsibility. Ugh,
Right.
children,
Hmm.
yuck." You pretend that you don't want it so that you don't have to admit that you feel like you're failing.
Yeah. Like a
So
defense mechanism
yeah,
almost.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it really is quite difficult in a culture where everybody or so many people know you, and their
Mhm.
expectation is that you know child, husband, well, I don't even think husband really counts so much now, but
Mhm.
school, job, family, we'll
Yeah.
just say family. So
Yes. Yes.
mhm.
Okay. Now, when you eventually got the news 4 years later that you were expecting, like, how did you feel at that point in time and then, thereafter?
Shocked is is the primary word that comes to mind, because I think I got to a point where I started thinking that maybe I just have to accept that this is not my fate.
Mhm.
I'm going to be a perpetual godmother and auntie.
Right.
So you start prepping your mind that it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
Then, to be honest, it was a bit of a rocky time in my relationship as well.
Okay.
So, and then the pandemic came, and then
Right.
we were stuck.
So it's a
And
lot of factors.
yeah, and I think even sometimes too, even just being the lockdown, it was.
Mhm.
I know there are people who didn't like it and suffered and not trivializing their experience or anything like that. But I loved being home,
Right.
um, and I think it was a relaxing environment as well that
Mhm.
perhaps without the pandemic probably wouldn't have. But I found out that I was pregnant just because I was really being cheap. I realized that my period didn't come, and I
Right.
thought to myself, "What's wrong with me now?" So I
Right.
said, "Let me just go to the doctor and see what's wrong with me now." And I said, he usually tests for pregnancy, and you have to pay for the test when you get there. And the test is more expensive at his office than if you
And
go at
yes.
the pharmacy. So I said, just to avoid the little $8 extra,
Mhm.
I'm going to just go do a test myself, take the
Right.
negative result picture and show it to him. So that was the plan, just to take the negative picture and save $8.
Mhm.
But then you took the test and
It was positive.
okay, what's happening here? And I,
Right.
I kid you not, I drove right back to the pharmacy and bought another
Other
one
one. Yes.
just to be sure.
Mhm.
And it was so exciting. I was happy, like it was finally happening after 4 years, and I was 37 at the
Mhm.
time. So
Mhm.
it really was a joyous, exciting experience for both of us, that we really started planning immediately and doing
Right.
things immediately. So we were really excited to welcome this child, and to know that you're finally pregnant and it's finally happening was
Yeah.
it was validating and
Mhm.
also very exciting as well.
Right. Okay, so I mean, I don't even know how we get to this point, but talk me through as much as you can and as much as you're comfortable talking about it, how you go from a healthy pregnancy to the loss of your son.
So I had a relatively smooth pregnancy for the first 20 weeks. No issues, no morning sickness, no, excessive fatigue or anything like that. Um, but then at the 20-week mark, I started experiencing pains in my pelvic region. My doctor explained that the fibroids were actually degenerating, or breaking down, because now the baby and the fibroids are fighting for blood supply. And
Right.
as he put it, the baby was winning. So they
Mhm.
were breaking down.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, that came with a lot of pain. Um,
Right.
at the 26-week mark,
Mhm.
the pains continued off and on,
And
but
can you describe for me what those pains felt like?
um, I felt like I don't you I hope you guys use the term in Trinidad, but you see, when you say you have gas, um,
Yes.
yes, felt like you just sometimes, like it just feels like gas is just trapped in your
Right.
stomach, and it's extremely uncomfortable. Um, it
Okay.
started out it started out that way.
Okay.
Just feeling uncomfortable, and I was just drinking so much ginger tea, thinking,
Mm.
"Oh, this gas! I need to get rid of this gas." Um,
Yes.
but it intensified over the next 6 weeks, and about the Friday, there was a Thursday evening when, the pain was just really intense. I stayed
Mhm.
home because I just felt like it was too uncomfortable to go to work, and it
Right.
wasn't getting any easier. And then I realized that I started bleeding.
Right.
So I went to my doctor, and again, I didn't know that, bleeding equals hospital. But
Mhm.
in an event, when I got there, I didn't stay there very long. He told me to go to the hospital.
Right.
And they explained to me that I was having contractions.
Okay.
So apparently, the pain from the degenerating fibroids actually triggered my body into thinking that I was in labor.
Right.
So they gave me medication to stop the contractions,
Mhm.
but it just slowed them down a bit. So I was in the hospital on Friday. The
Mhm.
Saturday and the Sunday, I was on bed rest. Saturday was okay, minimal pain, but I still felt liquid escaping me.
Right.
whenever I move. So my instructions were to don't
Don't
move
move
too
at
much,
all.
just keep as still as possible. But this Sunday evening, I remember clearly this Sunday evening, the pain just came right back, and it just
Hmm.
started getting much more intense. And the nurses eventually called the doctor, and they couldn't give me much pain medication because there's not much you could
Right. That's
really
safe.
administer in that situation. But it was terrible,
Mm.
terrible contractions from Sunday evening into Monday morning, when eventually my water just broke. And
Okay.
um, then they had to uh, deliver. And I'm told my son breathed about a few times, but then he left us. So it was a really really difficult path, because you just sometimes things happen to you, and you can't figure out, why is this happening
Hmm.
to me when I'm someone who is able to welcome this child, wants to welcome this child, has been praying and dreaming about this child. Why would something like this happen to me? And I think that was my initial reaction, as well as feeling extremely, um, you feel like a failure.
Hmm.
And every woman who I've spoken to who has suffered miscarriage has explained to has found something to blame herself for
Right.
it. There's always this common thing.
Hmm.
And I was thinking, oh, I shouldn't have drank that soda last week. I
Yeah.
didn't do any exercise this week, and
Mm.
different things. And you really become very hard on yourself. And that's the experience I'm hearing from other women, and that's really the experience I had as well. I apologize to my partner. It still seems weird, because I'm thinking, I feel like I have to tell him sorry for not bringing his son, and it really was a very hard time for me emotionally in that period.
And how did you cope? Do you feel like you've coped?
I do, and I think one of the things that I've learned, one of the major things that I've learned, is that this is an ongoing thing. This is not
Hmm.
a destination. Healing is not a destination. You just have to try and get as many good days as possible. And
Hmm.
you really have to address your mind to um, making sure that the sadness doesn't consume you. And I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest thing that I've learned from this experience. You really have a lot of control over how you feel and how you approach situations. And I just was really adamant that, I don't want this sadness to consume me. It was a
Hmm.
point where I really got scared. I really got scared, because I was so uncomfortable with people. I
Right.
want to be around anybody. Going to the supermarket felt like you telling me to walk across a desert, how uncomfortable it was. I was afraid to go anywhere by myself. I felt like everybody was staring at me, because
Hmm.
in my circumstance, I already had a big belly. Other people saw me, people knew I was pregnant. So
Pregnant. Yes.
it's not like you could hide the fact that you're not pregnant anymore. And
Hmm.
so between people coming up to you and asking you what you had, because
Mm.
they're not pregnant anymore, or somebody just coming up and asking you, I hear you lose a baby, what happened?
Oh. Oh. Wow. Okay.
Like that sort of thing, that just feeling like anticipating those kind of interactions with people, I was extremely uncomfortable to be around anybody. And I think that's when I started really getting scared, because that's not my usual
Right.
personality at all. So
Mm-hmm.
I enlisted the help of a therapist. That's where
Right.
everything started.
Yeah.
Um, and, and that's where I think, I like to use the analogy of the therapist unraveling the Christmas tree light. You know, like how don't know
Yeah.
how nobody knows how these Christmas lights is get so tangled up,
Tangled. Yes.
and put them in nice, put them in the box nicely, but then they end up in this huge mess. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, therapy was like me sitting down with my therapist, trying to untangle these lights,
Yeah.
settle your mind, separate truth from anxiety, separate, what is real from what it is you're fearing.
Yes.
And going through that sort of experience, I think really settled me, and helped me to cope and really reintegrate back into, my life. And
Okay.
I should mention as well that, because I didn't make it to the 28-week mark, which is the period, the gestational viability age here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um, because I didn't make it to that 28-week mark, I got 3 weeks home, as
Mm.
opposed to the regular 13 weeks that you would get for
Right.
delivering a baby. So I had to go back to work. In 3 weeks time, I was still in physical pain. I was still anxious. People still come into your office asking for advice, and
Yes.
you still have responsibilities, and it really was making me extremely uncomfortable. And so therapy was really the starting point for me, for actually getting to a place where, okay, I understand what has happened, so I need to know, try to figure out how to move forward.
Yes. And I
Mhm.
guess that's a good segue into the book because is it through therapy that you decided that you were going to journal and put your thoughts?
No, that's me. That's,
Okay.
that's me on a regular Tuesday.
Oh,
It's just my that's my preferred mode of expression. I
okay.
like writing. I've always written. You would
Hmm.
tend to see me writing you a long letter explaining why you hurt my feelings, rather than
Yes.
coming and confronting you. Although I do have that side in me, but I find I tend to come off a bit rough. So I prefer to take my time and write,
And
so
right.
that I'm not offensive. Uh,
Right.
so I started writing because it just felt like it just was natural for me.
Mhm.
Actually started writing words about what I felt, because everybody was asking me how you feel.
Mhm.
I don't know how to explain how I feel. I can't explain it, and I just challenged myself, like, how do I really feel? So I started writing down single words, and how I felt, and things that I wanted to tell people, things that I wish people would know, things that I got tired of explaining. And I just ended up developing this body of work. And I feel as though I had a very strong spiritual urging from God. Like, this experience has to turn into something that could help other people. And also, it was a way for me to stop having to explain myself to people, because it really got tiring
Yes.
after a
Can
while.
imagine.
And it just, like, it's almost like I had these very rehearsed answers, because I already wrote things out.
Mhm.
So the book started from me just wanting to express myself, so I could explain to people what I was feeling. My partner as well, who is usually extremely quiet and don't like to talk, he was the one who was pushing me, talk to me, tell me what you're feeling. Like, who are you? Where did this person come from? So he really was pushing me to talk.
Right.
And I think that's just having that experience of that outlet. I really
Mhm.
started to realize it was helping me.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I decided, and because of the anxiety I was feeling, I said, okay, I'm gonna go to call a therapist, and I'm going to share with her the things that I've written so that she
Mm-hmm.
could have some insight into what I was feeling as well. Because I didn't want to just go and just bawl.
Right.
I did the first session anyway, but
Right. And I feel like that's unavoidable, right?
yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those experiences where writing started the process, and then as the more I started to get it out, I needed somebody to help me figure out,
Yeah.
where I could go from there, and then from there I did different things as well to help me to cope.
Right. Wow. Okay. And I mean, this speaks to the importance of seeking help when you just don't know how to work things out yourself. And I feel, as women, sometimes as professional women, we feel like this burden from
Yeah.
where I don't know, but that we need to figure out our stuff on our own, you
Mhm.
know?
And we don't want to seem weak, and
Correct.
we don't want anybody in our business.
Business.
That's a
Yes.
big one.
That's a huge one.
Yeah, so I think and to be honest, for me, I sought a therapist who was not from St. Kitts and Nevis for that reason.
Right.
Um,
Which is
because
well within your right as well.
yeah, yeah, because you just think, I grew up around some of these therapists. I went to school with some of these therapists. Like, look at me
Mm-hmm.
telling you about it. Just felt strange.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly enough, my partner and I did go to therapy together, and we
Mm-hmm.
went to someone who we both know, and it was an extremely professional experience. So I know for sure that it's possible for you to even go to somebody who you're familiar with and have a helpful professional experience as well.
Right. Okay. And now, without divulging too much more from the book, I just would like for you to help us, my listeners, myself. How should we help? Like, what's the best advice you can give us for helping a loved one that has experienced loss? Like, that's something that's comforting, but yet still helpful, you know?
So the first piece of advice that I normally give people, because that's the first question, like, I don't know
Mhm.
what to do, I don't know what to say.
Say, yeah.
Um, it feels like a difficult question, or you don't know what to say and you don't know what to do, because your motivation behind it oftentimes is that you're trying to make her feel better.
Right.
You can't do it.
Mm.
It's not possible. There is no magical combination of words that could take away the pain. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot make her feel better. So
Right.
let's start from there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make her feel worse.
Right.
So the insensitive questions, or trying to pry, or pushing her to talk about the story,
Mm-hmm.
that might not be advisable unless she's the one who initiates the conversation. So you
Right.
allow her to share as much as she wants to share.
Mm-hmm.
But don't push the conversation. Don't push your company your yourself into her life either. You really have to know the person who you're dealing with, because for me, I did not want to see anybody.
Buddy.
I
Yeah.
don't come in my house, don't message me, don't call me. I just was seeing messages and not responding for the first couple weeks or so. But I know that there are people who want to feel, surrounded, and
Yes.
their community around them. So you have to know the person that you're dealing with. That's definitely not um a one size fits all answer. You really have to know the person that you're dealing with. So once you know the person, approach with caution.
Mm-hmm.
And the simplest thing you could say is, I am sorry you're going through this experience.
Yeah.
I am sorry that this happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
No, God knows best.
Mm-hmm.
No, everything happens for a reason. We all know these things, but when it is fresh, it's
Yeah.
not helpful,
Right.
because you can't see the good in losing your child
Yeah.
right away.
No.
You eventually could get to that point,
Mm-hmm.
but in the immediate aftermath of a friend or family member losing a child, please leave
Mm-hmm.
God out of it, leave
Mm-hmm.
good out of it, unless you are yourself going to pray for that person. And you don't have to share with them that you're praying.
Right.
You, or you could just tell them that you're praying for them. Or
Yeah.
you could ask them, would you feel comfortable if I pray with you? You just really have to go at their pace. So don't push yourself. Don't, it's not about what you think is best. I wish I could
Yeah.
highlight and bold, bold
And
that.
underline that. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
it's not about what you think is best. You really have to go at her pace.
Yeah.
And you have to go at the man's pace as well, because men
Mm-hmm.
are suffering as well. And I don't think that's part of the conversation that we have.
Yes.
And you have to think about them as well. But number one, it's not about what you think is right. It's what according to what they need. And then the next thing I would say is just remember that you cannot remove the pain. Nothing,
Right.
nothing can remove the pain. So even people who I had interactions with who told me, I don't know. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't call you, but I heard about it, and I'm thinking you could have just sent a message that says, I'm sorry. I heard
Mm-hmm.
about what happened, and if you need me, I'm
Yeah.
here. And
Yeah.
don't say it if you don't mean it.
Right.
Um, so try and give practical help as well. You might want to bring lunch. You may want,
Right.
if the person has other children, you might say, let me hold the children for an
Or
afternoon or
yes.
something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
quit trying to make her feel better. It's
Yeah.
not possible. It's really, really not possible. You could just really help her cope in the circumstances.
And you know what I really love about the work that you're doing with this book, and I think it's not just about your experience of loss, but it's also about how, healthcare providers such as myself or anybody else, or whether it's an OBGYN, we can see this experience from another vantage point that we
Mhm.
wouldn't typically see, right? So you're offering this broader perspective that we need to now consider when treating with patients, when treating with our clients, because
Mhm.
it's, some of these things can become very run of the mill, like, okay, yes, okay, it's a miscarriage, okay, next, but
Mhm.
not consider that patient, not consider that person. So I think, yes, it's a great book for pregnancy sufferers, but it's also a great book for providers to be reminded of what, like, this is human life we're dealing with.
It is, and I think I was fortunate enough to have a doctor who shared with me a book called As a Man Thinketh.
Mm-hmm.
Never heard about that book before, but he said to me, Jian, if you want to conceive again, you're going to have to get your mind in a place where you can welcome that. You can't carry the anger, you can't carry the frustration. You really have to focus on the emotional and the spiritual side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me that book to help me with that. That came from my doctor.
Wow, that's kudos
So,
to him.
so you see the importance, because one of the things I realize as well is that the doctors are the glue to everything,
Mm-hmm.
because that might be the only person a person who has suffered pregnancy loss interacts with.
Correct.
So the concept of therapy might be, you might not know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you might not think it's useful to you.
Right. You may not be able to afford it as well.
Exactly. And that's actually one of the things that I've been advocating for there to be a responsibility on doctors to share these sorts of information, these sorts of resources with people. And we're
Mm-hmm.
talking simply about a sheet of paper that says these are counselors in
Mm-hmm.
your country. And
Yes.
when you have a client who has gone through something traumatic like pregnancy loss, you just share that information with them,
Right.
try to encourage them to deal with the spiritual and emotional aspects of it, because that can also manifest negatively physically, which
Yes.
is something that I had to deal with because my blood pressure was all over the place after
Mm-hmm.
that happened. And all sorts of tests, every test in the world you could think of, I went for it. And until my doctor just said, Jan, you're grieving.
Yeah.
That's it. You're grieving. And that's really what has your blood pressure out
Pressure
of
all over. Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh.
just being more holistic in the type of care that we deliver, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, well, as doctors or as hospitals, counselors, and I've actually had doctors reach out to me and said that they've suggested the book to patients as well.
I think it would be a great suggestion.
hmm So
Yeah.
having that sort of so it really was helpful that doctors have also found the book helpful, and I do have an endorsement from a doctor on the back of the book as well.
Oh,
And
lovely.
that's something that I did before I published. I shared it with select group of people just to get their feedback. So I even
Mm-hmm.
shared it with the minister, one of the ministers of health here, and
Right.
she wrote a review on the back of the book because there are things for policymakers as well, and parliamentarians and so on. So it's a look at the whole
Big
gamut of what,
picture. Mm-hmm.
yes, pregnancy loss looks like, and how we can make adjustments to help people cope just a little bit better, because you can't take
No.
up everything, but
No.
there are different things. And even hearing, for example, one of the things that I dealt with, and I later found out that other women have been dealing with it, is that you had a miscarriage and you're still on the maternity ward of the
Mm.
hospital, and I just kept hearing babies crying
Babies crying.
for days. And even when I came home, I was still hearing it.
Yes.
So, it just having a policy decision that says when someone has gone through this experience, shift them to another ward so that they're
Yeah.
not, it just feels like knives stabbing
Mm-hmm.
you every time you're
Yeah.
hearing these babies, and not one of
None.
those cries belong to yours.
Yeah.
So things like simple things like that
Oh,
are
yes.
recommendations that I make in the book.
Fantastic. Now, our listeners are going to want to know where they can get this book. I'm going to put the information in the show notes, but I still
Mhm.
want you to tell us where we can find your book.
Right. So the book is called Lifting the Weight of Miscarriage: Healing Insights on Pregnancy Loss for Sufferers and the People Around Us. It's a long title, but it was important.
Yes.
Um, but it's available on Amazon, all of the Amazon markets. So
Mm-hmm.
Canada, US, Dutch, Spanish, wherever.
Right.
It's available on all of the Amazon markets.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have copies as well with me. So there are people who have requested signed copies. I actually have one to send to Trinidad tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
Um, People have been requesting that. So you could also reach out to me if you want a signed copy, and I will mail it to you. You pay online. I have a payment portal
Mm-hmm.
account. So you pay online and the book comes to you signed. So just depends on what you want. But I really want us to think about this conversation about pregnancy loss. And if the book is nothing more than a conversation piece for you, uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally happy with that, because we really need to take the veil of silence off of this topic.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's surrounded with a lot of shame and embarrassment, and
Yes.
um, you feel like people are judging you. But the number one thing that I want to communicate to women who have suffered pregnancy loss is that you're not alone, and it is far more common than perhaps we recognize. So
Yes.
even though you might be suffering, feeling lonely and depressed, and nobody understands, I assure you that that's not the case. It's really not the case. You just really have to hopefully reach out to persons who have been in a similar circumstance, and I could promise you the stories are so much alike,
Yes. Yes.
so much alike. It that has been the most eye-opening takeaway from my
Mm-hmm.
experience with this book. Just people's stories, and even like what I just shared about going home and still hearing the baby, and me
Mm-hmm.
being afraid to tell anybody that I was hearing it.
Hearing. Mm-hmm.
So because they think, oh gosh, if I go tell anybody that, they're gonna think I'm crazy, and they're gonna want to send
Yeah.
me back to the hospital, and I don't want to go back up there. So having had that experience, and then you hear somebody else say it, is like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
not crazy.
Crazy. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So you're not alone, and I really just want to also encourage women to recognize that you can learn to cope with it.
Yeah.
It it doesn't have to stall your life or debilitate you or anything like that. There will be
Mm-hmm.
good days and there will be bad days, but I think the trick is learning how to pull yourself out of that sadness.
Right.
I really think that that's the key to healing, not
Yes.
time. That's
Mm.
that's one of the biggest fallacies we tell ourselves, that time will heal everything. Time
Mm-hmm.
runs. That's all time does. Time just
Mm-hmm.
runs. But our ability to heal and cope with grief and trauma really depends on our ability to pull ourselves out of
Out of
those inevitable periods where you feel sad and frustrated and angry, but you just can't let it stop you from still living the promise that you still have because you're still alive.
Yes. And thank you. That was just beautifully said. Thank you very much. And, just to close off, I like to ask my guests to choose a song that's representative of their journey. And I'm just wondering if you had a song in mind.
Well, there is definitely a song that I just found out again. I even mentioned it in the book. It's by Tasha Page Lockhart,
Mm-hmm.
and it's called "Why Not Me."
Mm.
um just the chorus is like, why not me? I'm the perfect person to go through this storm. It won't kill me, it won't break me. I'll move on, and I'll come out even better than before, and I'll never see this place anymore, because my faith is growing stronger every day, and I'm removing everything that's in my way, and the fact that I survived another day makes me say, why not me?
Oh.
And that song just
Mm-hmm.
really touched my heart, because like I said, the very first thought that I had coming out of the experience was, why was
Why
this
me?
happening to me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then to get to a point where you could say, well, why not me? um,
Mm-hmm.
there must be a reason why God, or if you choose the universe, whichever one people are comfortable with, it must be a reason why these things are happening, and it's something to teach you. It's something that you grow from, because you
Right.
you can grow from these sorts of experiences. And
Yeah.
I just think that perhaps it happened to me because God knew that I would be able to transform my own pain into something tangible, like a book that could help other people and
Mm-hmm.
satisfy a need, because I didn't see the Caribbean books. I
No.
looked and I didn't see them. And so that really was one of my big motivations as well. I cannot be the only one who's searching for Caribbean based indigenous material. I cannot be the only one.
No.
Um, so if there's anyone who is looking for that sort of material on pregnancy loss, granted, I'm not an expert. This is just my story and my
Yes.
observations, and try sharing with people things that worked for me, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody will be different. But in the very least, it's a start. If
Yes. Of course.
have nothing. If you have
Mm-hmm.
nothing else, it's a start. And I recommend books that I read. I Again, music is a very big part of me. The songs that helped me, the movies that helped me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's down to sample text messages to send
Oh,
when you don't
really?
know what to say.
Wow.
So I really just try to give that sort of practical advice on how to cope with pregnancy loss, whether it's your own loss or someone who is around you.
And I think it's the perfect, if you don't know what to say and you want to get something for someone, whether it's a gift, I think it's a perfect gift to give someone who's experienced pregnancy loss because you don't have to say anything.
Hmm.
You literally have your manual set out for them. And like you said, this is your story. Everybody's story is going to be different or experience,
Hmm.
but at least they have something to work with,
Yeah,
especially in a time of grief when you never know how you're going to react. When
you really
you,
don't.
you can't predict it. You can't predict.
Especially when, like in my situation, when there was no indication that anything would go wrong.
Right.
So
Exactly.
having that shock factor as well.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and then the world doesn't stop because you're in pain.
No.
So you still have to continue living while you're carrying this immense weight with
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jian. Thank you. I've
you.
really been inspired by your story, and I am so glad that you have joined us on Caribbean Bird Stories because even though it's bird stories, I've tried really hard to try and cover all the aspects surrounding pregnancy, birth, parenting, and loss, and
Yeah.
infertility. So this is part of it, and it would be remiss of me to not capture as many of the stories that I can that relate to as many of our Caribbean women. So
Mhm.
thank you for sharing. I wish you an abundance of success with your
Thank you.
book and in your future endeavors. And maybe we get to talk again soon.
Sure. And thanks so much for your work as well. I was really surprised to see that there's actually a podcast talking about these things. That in itself was a shock to me. So you continue your work and really
Thank
try
you.
to generate those sorts of conversations that we are sorely in need of as Caribbean women as well.
Well, thank you so much. So until we meet again, bye. And thank you for being the first St. Kittitian. Are you from St.
Yes,
Kitts
petition.
itself?
Yes, I'm from
Okay.
St. Kitts. Yes.
Okay. I've never been and I really hope to visit soon. Um,
Well, whatever you do, just give me a call.
all right. I will definitely hold you to that.
Yeah.
All right. See
Thanks so
you.
much.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.